Hispanic brothers, our Asian brothers, all want justice for Trayvon Martin. Put your signs up, everybody. Show the world, Chicago. We want justice for Trayvon Martin today.
Stop giving permission to people to kill black children. Finally, I pray we'll stand our ground in demanding that America face the evil of unemployment, failed education, poverty, mass incarceration, and all the other evils that create an atmosphere of violence and hopelessness, and we will demand they end now. Sisters and brothers, it's not good enough to just come here and honor Trayvon. It's not good enough to just come here and remember Trayvon. But we must come here and make up our mind that the bullet that killed Trayvon woke us up. And we ain't going back to sleep till justice goes down.
The Reverend Dr. Father Michael Flavor, everybody.
The Reverend Marshall Hatch Sr.
God bless you, Chicago. We're certainly grateful for the remarks of our president on yesterday, who reminded us again that we cannot lose sight that for the family of Trayvon Martin, this is a personal tragedy. And we're so grateful for the dignity and the continued faith of Sabrina and Tracy. Give them a hand today. Thank God for those parents who, in the midst of this tremendous and profound grief, have carried themselves with the utmost dignity. As a preacher, we must tell you that there is power in innocent blood, and there is power in unearned suffering. And it is that power that brings us to this pregnant moment in history, when we move from the narrow views of state rights to civil rights to now universal human rights. The Justice Department must take this case as a federal case of the violation of Trayvon Martin's civil rights. Today we appreciate the great insights of Stevie Wonder, who is one who is blind, who can see so well, because he was the first public personality to declare that he will not perform in a state where there is stand your ground law in force. Stevie Wonder can see further than other people with two eyes. And his stand allows us to follow the money. Somebody say, follow the money. And you will see that the same sources, the American Executive Legislative Council, the same sources that fund Stand Your Ground, fund NRA, funded George Zimmerman's defense, fund exporting jobs and breaking unions and underfunding education and state rights. We can read, we can follow the money. We know that we have forces lined up against us. But we line up against those same forces, and we call all over America for a repeal of Stand Your Ground laws, license to kill all over America. We will not go back. And so now is the time for a new moral vision for America, a new American future where people of goodwill all over the country say now is the time for the people to stand our ground. Stand our ground for peace. Stand our ground for Trayvon Martin. Stand our ground for equal justice. Stand our ground for equal protection under the law. Stand our ground for full employment. Stand our ground for equal access to a high-quality public education. Stand our ground for decent housing. Stand our ground for struggling homeowners. Stand our ground for health care for every one of us. It's time to stand our ground for all of America. As we leave the podium today, we want to say everybody has a right. The problem with stand your ground laws is that they're standing against others and want to keep other people out. We stand our ground and say we want to bring everybody in. America is a Big Ten America. And so this land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Great Lakes down to the Gulf of Mexico, this land belongs to you and me because it was paid for with blood, sweat, and tears of Martin King, Fannie Lou Hanna, Frederick Douglass. This land was paid for by your fathers and my fathers, by the blood of the martyrs.
Say I am somebody. I am somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop the violence. Save the children. Save the teachers. Save the children. Save the neighborhoods. Save the children. Save trauma units. Save the children. This land is our land. Red and yellow. Brown, black, and white. We are all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Never surrender. Never surrender. Never surrender. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. I would ask us for Brother Nelson Mandela. Let us stop a moment and join hands. We march around the nation today because of a state of emergency. 1 million black men are in jail. Almost as many as there are in college. 1 in every 3 black men are caught up in the system. We're attacked by the police, vigilantes, judges, politicians, banks, and industries. We're here because of our children who now face diminished justice. We're here today because of Trayvon Martin's witness, how you've used him in such a marvelous way. We're here because of Stephon Watts. We're here because 8,000 of our children languish in Cook County Jail today. Trayvon Martin, an unarmed boy murdered on the way home by a man who saw him as a suspect rather than a resident. He walked away after the murder, submitted his gun to his police buddies. He took no alcohol, no blood test, no drug test. It took 44 days of protest to get him into the judicial process. Like those who killed Medgar Evers and Emmett Till, the killer walked away. The jury identified with the predicament of Zimmerman as doing his job rather than Trayvon unarmed and going home. Can you imagine if Trayvon had murdered Zimmerman and there were 6 black jurors accepted by the prosecutors? The attorneys and the jurors sought to avoid race. The defendants sought to deny rights and race. The only blacks in the room were the ghosts of Trayvon and his weeping parents. We can adjust to this predicament. We can resent it, or we can resist. We can now focus on Florida and stand your ground law while Trayvon lays in Florida because of this stand your ground law. Or we can boycott and fight back and not surrender. In Florida, stand your ground is an incentive to kill. It's Stevie Wonder again leading the way in 1983 as he boycotted Chicago Fest, uplifting Harold Washington. Stevie leads the way again in 2013. We cannot play in Florida. Stevie Wonder will not perform. Sororities, fraternities, conventions, spring breaks, we must all boycott Florida and stop stand your ground law. No more conventions, no more concerts, no more parties, no more spring breaks. Stand your ground until Florida's laws are abolished. While Trayvon is a spark, there's a Trayvon in every household, including the White House. There's a Trayvon in every town. It's Oscar Grant in Oakland. It's Diallo in New York City, shot 48 times in his doorway. It's Stephon Watts in Chicago, 15 years old, shot in front of his parents in cold blood. It's Marissa Alexander, the mother of 3 in jail in Jacksonville for standing her ground against an abusive husband. She shot us wall and there were no injuries. She is in jail for 20 years. It's not just Trayvon in Sanford. Last year, 57 shootings by police in Chicago, 93% black or brown. The judicial system has collapsed on us. We're cut and we're bleeding, and we don't like it. They've cut jobs, so we stand our ground. They're cutting teachers. We must stand our ground. They're closing schools. We must close our grounds. They're cutting public housing. We must stand our ground. They're foreclosing houses. We must stand our ground. They're closing post offices. We must stand our ground. They cut lending by the banks and trauma care. We must stand our ground. All these things are cutting our lives, and so we the people must stand up and fight back. Jails are making a profit on us. The UN Commission and the whole world must look at this, not just justice in Washington. The UN Commission, the whole world must see the human rights predicament of black Americans. There are more blacks in jail in America and in the nation, in the whole world. 2.5 million Americans in prison, more than half African American. This is a global human rights fight. We cannot stop in Washington. Take our case to the UN. The whole world must watch us fight back for global justice. Prison telephones. Two companies make $1.5 billion a year off of prison telephone calls. The last week, prisoners in Cook County were paying $3 million a year to Cook County. Prisoners paying prison telephone. Prison labor. In South Carolina, 20% of all prisoners are leased to private companies. Prison slave labor. Prisoners in Illinois make 600 products. Prisoners in Illinois are making Victoria's Secret undergarments. They are selling clothes to JCPenney and Target and Walmart. Urge the President of the United States to go to the Congress as Lyndon Johnson did. Demand protection for voting rights for everybody. It's time for a revived war on poverty. Right in Inglewood, they've cut bus services. They've closed houses. They've closed public housing. They've closed schools. It's time to stand up and fight back and go forward ever and backwards never. Parents, Pell Grants cut. Last year, 1,900 students were in Chicago State. Now they're 500. They've cut summer Pell Grants. They've cut Parent Plus loans. Morehouse had to put teachers on loan for a week during the spring because of Parent Plus. If we can bail out Iraq, bail out Pakistan, we in fact must bail out Chicago and Detroit and Memphis and bail out America and salvage our children.
I'm going to be short and sweet. I'm asking you not to forget. We have our anger and frustration today, but we need to have it next month. We need to have it in 2 months. We need to have it in 3 months. You need to hold all of our feet to the fire, and you need to hold your feet to the fire too. Turn your anger and your outreach and your outrage into action. We need you behind us when we're serving the federal government. We need to know the masses are behind us as we're trying to pass legislation, as we're trying to send resources back to the programs trying to stop the violence. So we need you just as much as you need us. And we cannot forget. We cannot forget Trayvon Martin, but we also cannot forget all our young people dying now. We are losing a generation of young people, the young people that are going to take our place. So we need to stand up for that. And last but not least, You have got to exercise your right to vote. I was just in a meeting, and 66% of the African Americans that could have voted in the last election voted. That's good, but that's not good enough. 64% of whites that could have voted in the last election voted. That's good, but that's not good enough. If you don't want these laws, we need to look at who we're putting in these offices from the ground up. It's not just about who's the president. It's about who's the mayor, who's the trustee, who's the school board member, who's the state rep, who's the state senator, who's the congresswoman, who's the state senator, who's your federal senator. Thank you. God bless. Keep the fight going. Thank you.
You know, it's good to be here with all of you, and I can't think of any better place that anybody could be on a Saturday afternoon in Chicago, but right here with you, the people who are united, who are serious. And I know that you're looking at Robin and Mary Flowers and myself right now, but I see a whole bunch of African American elected officials who are here. Aldermen, state representatives, state senators, school board members, people who are concerned, people who know that if we don't fight back, we will go back. And I don't believe that we will ever go back. I'm reminded as I quit that there are words that move us to action. And I remember my favorite poet, a guy named Claude McKay, who must have been talking about now when he was talking. And he simply said that if we must die, let it not be like hogs hunted and pinned in an inglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our cursed lot. He said that if we must, then let us nobly die, so that even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us, though dead. So yes, my brothers and sisters, let us show our brave. Let us meet the common foe, and for their 1,000 blows deal one death blow. For what before us lies the open grave, and like the true soldiers of liberation that we are, we'll meet and face the murderous cowardly pack, pressed to the walls dying, but always, always and forever fighting back. Let us continue and the struggle goes on.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm State Representative Mary Flowers, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today to stand on behalf of we, the people of the United States of America. It's my pleasure to be here with you today to stand on behalf of our children and to say to the world that we are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we're not taking this injustice anymore. Our children have a right to an education. Our children have a right to a job. If you can bail out the banks, if you can bail out the insurance companies, I know that we can bring jobs and education and a safe community to the United States of America, and specifically to the African American community. What we're doing here is wrong. We must save our children, we must save our future, and we can only do so at the ballot box and demand justice for all. Thank you very much.
No justice, no peace. I bring you greetings today on behalf of the family of Emmett Till, the estate of Mamie Till Mobley, and the Mamie Till Mobley Memorial Foundation, established to educate, engage, and empower our youth in the tradition of our founder, Mamie Till Mobley. First of all, on July 13th, when the not guilty verdict was delivered to George Zimmerman, I, like the rest of my family, was very disappointed, but not surprised. This prompted me to call my cousins, Simeon and Wheeler Parker, who were both eyewitness accounts of the tragedy. Wheeler traveled from Chicago with Emmett. He was 16, Emmett Till was 14. Simeon Wright lived in Mississippi in the home of Moses Wright, his father. When I called, and told the nation how he felt about the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman verdict. And I quote, Wheeler said, President Obama said this could have happened to him 35 years ago. Well, 58 years ago, this did happen to a 14-year-old in Money, Mississippi, Emmett Till. Listening to the incident that Trayvon experienced the evening he was murdered, the fear he expressed of being followed caused me to relive the terror of being awakened in the night with a flashlight and a gun in my face at the age of 16. The voices of white men asking for that fat boy from Chicago. Wheeler said the only thing that spared his life was that he wasn't fat. They went into the next bedroom and the next until they found Emmett Till, and they took him at gunpoint from the house of Mose Wright, and he was never seen alive again. As story recounts, he was beaten, tortured, mutilated, a gin fan tied around his neck, and tossed into the Tallahatchie River. When I heard the verdict, I said, wow, this is what this must have felt like 58 years ago. You see, I'm Emmett Till's third cousin. I didn't get to know Emmett, but I grew up surrounded by his mother and his grandmother and his stepfather. And I heard all the harrowing recounts of what happened 58 years ago. So for me, all I could think was that the festering sores of injustice were torn open all over again for my family. I understood why they shed the tears 58 years later. The heel is still there. The wound is still there unhealed. So when I heard the verdict, I said, this is what it feels like today when they're trying to abolish our voting rights and diminish them after they fought so earnestly for us to have them in 1965 and in the 50s. This is what it feels like when our substandard school systems and closures are mounting in the masses numbers beyond the 50s, where our teachers are working in horrible conditions, lack of technology in communities of color. This is what it feels like. I charge our youth today. Remain vigilant, remain vocal and visible. Don't lose your momentum because the past is now your present. I say the past is now your present. Amadou Diallo, Howard Morgan, Stephon Watts, Oscar Grant, Emmett Till, and Trayvon Martin. The past is now your present.
We want you to know that we have had a tremendous rally in Chicago, but not just in Chicago, in over 100 cities across America. Our voices are united. We want to thank Reverend Al Sharpton for his vision and the work of the National Acting Network. And then we thank God for every one of you. This is not the end, but this is the beginning. And so everywhere we go, we challenge every one of us. There was a time before we said goodbye, we always gave the greeting of peace. And that is what we're going to do today and from now on as we continue to build this movement. I'm going to ask everyone to lift their hands in prayer today. We thank God for Pastor Livingston and Pastor Ackery as these pastors stretch forth their hands over all of God's children. All of us valuable in God's eyesight, and all of us empowered by the Spirit of God to do God's will and God's work in the world. And we will not rest by the Spirit of God until justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Now may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face to shine upon you, lift up his countenance and smile on you. And all that received the blessing said peace. God bless you. Go in peace and continue the work of the movement.
No peace.
This is what democracy looks like. Justice system, that's a lie. They don't care what black inside. Justice system, that's a lie. They don't care what black inside. Justice system, that's a lie. They don't care what black inside. Justice system, that's a lie. They don't care what black inside. Justice system, that's a lie. They don't care what black inside. Justice system, that's a lie. They don't care what black inside. Justice system, that's a lie. They don't care what black Trayvon did not have to die. We all know the reason why. The whole system is guilty. Trayvon did not have to die. We all know the reason why. The whole system is guilty. Trayvon did not have to die. We all know the reason why. The whole system is guilty. Trayvon did not have to die. We all know the reason why. The whole system is guilty. The only way to get out of this screw. Hey, there's nothing left. What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? Hey, hey, ho, ho. Stand your ground, that's right. Ho, hey, hey, ho, ho. Hey, hey. Listen. It's Trayvon today, your child tomorrow. 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 Trayvon today, your child tomorrow.
No justice, no peace.
You want power?
No justice,
You got it.
no
Spread
justice,
the message.
no peace.
Facebook,
No justice,
YouTube,
no
Twitter.
peace. That's right. Everybody.
Send it to everybody. So every single clip you take, every single picture you take, send it to everybody.
Find Revolution Votes on Facebook. Join us and be out on the streets on August 10th. We will be there with this message. Not one more day. We know why Trayvon was murdered. We know the reason why the whole damn system is guilty. Don't treat like this is your son. Act like this is your son that got killed. Act like this is your nephew that just been murdered and you receive no justice. Stand up for Trayvon Martin because it can be you, it can be you, it can be a girl, it can be a young man, it can be a young girl, it can be many and big men. And we need to stand up. We need to keep this fight. Don't just have it today. Have it tomorrow. Have it for the long run. Get educated. Stop standing on the streets doing nothing. Stand right here. Protest for
whole damn system is filthy.
Thank you.